recording. Yes, so Bart, the floor is yours. You still with us?
Yeah, thank you, Sebastian. Okay, so I'm gonna tell a little bit about a project that I've been working on for a couple of years, actually. The C128 device manager. And let me get you some presentation. There we go. So, a little bit of history first, because, yeah, like I said, I've been working on this for a couple of years, and it is called C128 Device Manager, but it is a lot more than that.
Bart, sorry to interrupt you. We can just see your screen on the video that normally is showing your face. So that looks very small on the screen, except of course if we click on that. But is it possible to share it to the main?
You don't have my screen?
I can see his presentation and his face on the bottom right corner.
Yeah. If you want that face gone, I can just remove it.
At least on my end, it's not showing full screen. It's just showing on the... And I have two screens.
Yeah, there should be a presentation and just my face in the left, of in the right corner.
But even the presentation is not... It's only the camera that we see. So on a mobile, for example, then it shows only a quarter of the screen. So on my PC, it's still okay. It's half of the screen, but I think when we did the test last week, it was showing much better. It was taking the whole screen.
That's interesting. Let me try this. Is this better? Now the camera is gone.
Yeah. I see commenting that the ratio is not good, but in total it's fine. So I would say not let us not focus too much on that. Please continue.
Yeah, the ratio is 4 to 3 and not 16 to 9. That is correct. And well, my C128 will also be 4 to 3. Okay, so let's go back to the history of this thing. The first thing is, a couple of years ago, actually about a decade ago, I got a C128D, and the C128D has an internal drive, as you probably know. And if you want to use something like an SD2 IEC or an Ultima 2 or something like that, that internal drive can be a bit of a problem. So a couple of years ago, I also got an Ultima 2, and I actually started to have this problem that I want to use the Ultima 2 as drive 8, I want to have the internal drive as drive 9, or the other way around, depending on what I'm doing. And yeah, I could add a switch to the machine, a couple of switches actually, to turn off the drive, to switch its device ID. That would be nice, but I don't want to modify this machine, because it is a very, very good looking C128. It looks basically like it came out of the factory yesterday. So I don't want to modify it. And my solution was to write some software to do this, because, you know, we can change drive IDs in software. In the meantime, Krill from Plush came out with a tool called STFview, and that allows you to disable a drive. Well, it doesn't really, it does something else. It mutes the drive. Anyway, it allows you to remove the drive from the IEC bus. And that can be very important for some software, and it gets it out of the way. So what I decided to do is write a tool that includes the functionality of STFview and allows changing drive IDs. And well, that wasn't too difficult. It took me something like a month to make that work very well. And with that, I was done, I thought. Well, not really. So the first thing is I had this Ultima 2 Plus, and I wanted to use functionality of it. It can support an external function ROM for a C128, so I can just soft load it and I don't have to create an EEPROM or anything. That was the first thing. So let's make it load on the Ultima 2 Plus. And the second thing was that, yeah, now I have a nice tool and I have a nice ROM and I can add other things to it. So a couple of years further, I added a lot of things, and I will get into what things I added. But the first thing was that it was getting too big. And that means that I need to make multiple versions. I have a version for those who use an Ultima 2 Plus, like me, but there were people who don't have one and who still want to use the tool. And why, you will see, but there are reasons to want to use it without Ultima 2 Plus. And another thing is it includes some interesting diagnostics tools. I will get to that in a little bit more, but I made a standalone version of those diagnostic tools. So it actually exists in 3 versions, which are built at the same time, a standalone version, an Ultima 2 Plus version, and a diag-only version. They are all built from the same code, it's just a matter of some options being set. So what's in there? Well, the first thing is it manages device IDs. It can also disable drives. It has a boot manager. It has built-in diagnostics. It has integration with the Ultima 2 Plus. And it allows you to auto-start C128 programs, I must say. I could extend that to C64 programs, but for now, I didn't do that. So looking at managing device IDs, the simple thing that it can do is say you have a device drive at ID 8 and you want to move it to ID 9, or you have a device at ID 8 and ID 9, you want to swap those two. It can do those things. It can also say like, okay, you want your Ultima 2 at ID 8 and I will just disable the internal drive first. And that points at a nice thing. And it is a thing that the Ultima 2 allows me to do, which is detect a conflict between the drive of an Ultima 2 and the internal drive of a C128, or actually any drive. So that's about managing device IDs. The boot manager. Boot manager originally allows you to boot from any device ID, so 8 to 11. That is because, well, that's what the 128 supports. There are some interesting issues with C128 and booting from other device IDs. There are some interesting issues with changing a device ID and then booting from the device. But anyway, it can boot from multiple devices, and I will show how that works in the demonstration in a little bit. It also has built-in diagnostics, because when I got this 128, it looks brand new, but it had a problem. It has MT-RAM in there, and everyone who has a 128 and has seen one with problems knows that MT-RAM is a bit of a problem. It needs replacement. And yeah, I had one memory module which was defective, and it didn't show immediately. The system just started and all looked fine, but trying to run software, it would crash. Trying to run BASIC, it would do all kinds of weird stuff, and that all was pointing at an IC in bank 1 being broken. The problem was the C128 diagnostics didn't find it. Why? Well, because the C128 diagnostics RAM test is actually broken, I found out. So instead of fixing that, because the code of that is not that nice, I decided to write my own RAM test. And yeah, while I did that, I decided to also include it in my device manager tool. So I will show a little bit of the diagnostics in a little bit, but the diagnostics is mostly a RAM test. It also includes a VDC test because there is no real VDC test out there. So yeah, I included that as well. And it has U2 integration. It means it can talk to the cartridge, it can reconfigure it where needed, and it can make use of some of the extra features it offers. And like I said, it can auto start C128 software. And the nice thing is someone actually wrote a special boot menu for use with the device manager, which I will also show in a little bit. So what is behind this? The first thing is device type detection. And why is device type detection important? Well, because muting a device or disabling a device works different depending on what device it is. Is it a 1541 or a 1571? Those look approximately the same and can be used with the same code. If it is a 1581, that needs different code. And if it's any other device, I actually can't mute it because, well, I didn't figure out how to mute those devices yet. Device type detection can be done in a lot of ways, and many tools just look at the copyright string of the drive. They send a UI command and look at the answer it gets. And yeah, you can read the device type from that. And I can't use that because if you do that, the device ID that you may have set by software will be changed back to whatever the hardware says. And that's not what I want. So I needed something a little bit more complex. And if you look around on the C64 codebase or codebase 64, there is actually some nice code for device type detection. It's pretty complex what it does. It reads some memory from the drive, and then it says like, oh, if there's this, then it's probably this type of drive, and then it reads some other bytes of memory from the drive, and so on. I had to use that. It's not the nicest way to do it, but it has some big advantages when you ever try to change settings on a drive, like, well, changing the ID or maybe set it in a different mode for a 1571 or something like that. So another thing it does, like I said, it uses the Ultima 2 facilities. And one of the things is that I can make a ROM that's much bigger than the 32K that the function ROM allows. I can use up to 1 megabyte of ROM. And that is also why there is a separate U2 version and a standalone version, because the standalone version can only be 32K. It has to be limited in functionality, but it doesn't have to include all the Ultima 2 functionality anyway. But I only can use 32K and I need more than that. Why do I need more? Because there's a lot of stuff in there actually. Originally, for just changing device IDs and muting drives, I could do that in 16K actually. And the other 16K goes to the diagnostics. But there's a lot more in there. And the last item on this list is hyperspeed support. And what is hyperspeed? Well, hyperspeed gets you direct access to the file system of an Ultima 2 using DMA. So it is a very fast way for loading programs, and it's also a very fast way for doing character I/O to a drive, because it doesn't use DMA for that, but it is still as fast as a parallel connection to any normal floppy drive. So it is really very fast. So looking at this functionality, that gets me over the 32 kilobytes, and that is mostly the hyperspeed support. Where do you get this thing? Well, 2 places. There is a link on my own website, and there is a Facebook group. And if you want to use this tool, I strongly recommend that you join the Facebook group, because there are a lot of people in there who know a lot about this. There's some additional software there, and you will also find the most recent non-official releases in there. I regularly create test releases, and you will find them in this group. They are not in the public group, but they will be in, well, they will usually be in this, in the Facebook group. So let me show you a few things of how Device Manager actually looks like. And for that, I need to switch to my 128. Do you see this picture right? Or is it cut out?
Perfectly fine on my end. Thanks.
Okay. Then I'm also going to switch myself to my C128 so I can see what I'm doing. And let me move my microphone a little bit. Okay, so I'm at my C128, and when you start up, this is basically the first screen that you get. And let me show you a few of the things in there. First of all, the advanced options, and this is where you find the diagnostics. And when we look at the diagnostics, you see a few things in there. The first thing is it does a CPU test, a MMU test, and it can test the system RAM and, well, lots of other things. And as you can see, it runs on 80 column mode. It can also run in 40 column modes. Both work fine. So let me exit this. You see the diagnostics works, and, well, that's all fine. So the second thing in there is we have some settings, and those tell what you can do. The settings can be saved to disk and will be restored the next time you start your machine, also after a power cycle. The first thing in there is drive autoconfig. This tells if it should ask questions about what to do, about drive conflicts or not. It can start or disable auto start, and it also has a menu that it can start. So I will use the menu, and you can disable a lot of things like hyperspeed or, well, all kinds of other things. Let's just go to the menu itself. So this is the startup menu that it comes with, and from here you can start the auto start program again. And I will do that first and show you what one of my friends, Alexander, wrote. The nice thing is it gets the time from NTP, so it automatically sets the time of your machine. Oh, that's interesting. And so this is a nice menu program that can be started on power on of your machine if you want. And from that you can start GEOS or, well, whatever you would like. So let me restart my machine like this. And go to the next option in there, which is a starter or a browser, if you want to call it that. What you can do with the browser, you can look around on the file system of the Ultima 2 cartridge or on an SD2 IEC or on a floppy drive. It supports any device that the kernel supports. And you could go to, well, for example, disk image. Let me just take this disk image. You can select it, and it will just auto start the disk for you. As you can see, I won't let this program start completely. It is a nice demo that you can look at if you have a 128. But anyway, the idea of the start menu and the program starter is that you can run any program that's on some attached storage. And this works for 128 software. It also works for C64 software. And it will use DMA to load your C64 program and then switch to 64 mode. As I don't have 40 column output at the moment, I can't capture it at the moment. I can't show you that, but I can show you that besides just starting a disk image, you can also go to some program file, and I will show another image this time. Let me go down. Like this one. I entered the disk image now, and as you can see, there are some programs in there, and I can just start a program if I want to. And there we go. And this is a very large file, and as you can see, it loads it using DMA, and that goes really, really quick. So let me turn this off again. So after showing this, I will show you how you can install the device manager, because that is something that gets me a lot of questions. And once I've shown you that, I will have some time for any additional questions that you might have. So let me switch to yet another window. There we go. Okay. So this is the menu of the Ultima 2 cartridge, which you may or may not know. And what you should do is you should put the file on in the flash directory in the directory cards. And I have two versions here, and this is the most recent version. And you can say run card, and it will start that cartridge for you. What you can also do is press F2, go to C64 and cartridge settings, and select the cartridge type here, and that will enable it permanently. And well, on power on of your machine, this program will be started automatically. Switch. And as you can see, it actually started the device manager and then started the boot manager. So this is mostly useful if you have an Ultima 2 or an Ultima 2 Plus. It works on both, but the standalone version is also very usable because it allows you to boot from a different device than ID 8, and it allows you to run the diagnostics. And well, it has this nice file browser, program starter, or whatever you want to call it, and that works on any kind of storage. And also that is a good reason to want to run it without an Ultima 2 Plus. You can put it on an EEPROM, and that works in the internal function ROM socket. You can put it on an EEPROM on a Versa card, and that also works. So let me switch back to myself again, hopefully.
Is it time for question, Bart, or do you have?
Yeah, I was trying to get myself back in the picture, and there we are. Yes, if anyone has any questions, please go ahead.
Yes, I see quite a lot of nice comments. Then I see here, probably a stupid question since I'm no tech. Is this some kind of a cartridge? So the answer is no, but I leave it up to you.
Sorry, I didn't entirely understand you, Sebastian.
It says, probably a stupid question. Is this some kind of cartridge?
It is actually a CRT file, which you can use with the Ultima 2 Plus, or you can put it on an EEPROM and put that in the internal function ROM socket of a C128. You could also put it on a cartridge if you want to. I think Backbit actually supports putting this on a cartridge. And you can put it on an EEPROM and stick that on a Versa card. And with the proper configuration, that would also work.
Good to know. Actually, you also answered a question that was on Facebook. I see, will this version fit internal ROM flashable EEPROM? So that's answered as well. Yeah.
Yes, it was specifically made to work from both.
Yeah. And then, okay, does it work without Ultimate 2?
Yes, the standalone version works without Ultimate 2. Of course, you miss some functionality that it has, because detecting conflicts between devices only works with an Ultimate 2 because it requires some functionality of the Ultimate 2. But for example, the file browser and the diagnostics and the boot manager all work without Ultimate 2.
Okay, thank you. I think from the questions in the chat for the moment, I don't see other, maybe question from my end. From what I see there, you're more or less halfway to a new operating system, right?
Let's say that the current directory this project is in is called BIOS 128, and I could just call it OS 128. Yeah, it's quite moving in that direction. There are a few future expansions planned. One of that is actually another command line interface instead of using BASIC. That is one of the things that I'm still working on, and the core of that will already be in version 2. One of the other things that it can do is, for example, not start with the default BASIC, but do you have another function ROM like Servant 128? It can also start that for you, because with the Ultima 2 and being able to use 1 megabyte of ROM, I can actually include essentially every function ROM that exists for the 128 and start it from Device Manager. One that I'm playing with a lot currently is the Warp Speed 128 fast loader. And looking at integrating that's still giving me some headaches, but the core of that already works. So yeah, it's more like a BIOS or maybe even a complete operating system wannabe. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Just to recap, you said you showed the page, the web page. It's also on the Commodore users web page, and we will certainly post it as well. But then, are you then contributing alone on this? So you mentioned that there is also this Facebook group. Are you expecting on other enthusiasts to join you on this project, or how does that work? How do you see collaboration with other people?
The Facebook group is first of all for releasing new versions, alpha versions, beta versions. People often give feedback on the Facebook group, and yeah, it's first of all for people interested in more than what's in the public release, interested in possible future functionality, discussing that, and especially in getting the latest, well, development version, I would say. Usually what I put in there is pretty stable. It's not like a very early development version that crashes the moment you try something. It's usually tested to the point of being usable, because I always run the latest development version myself. And I always keep it running at least for a couple of hours, go through the basic functionality before I put it on there. But people have special configurations, have different machines, and so on. And at times that causes problems, and they come with questions there. And at times they just want to discuss new functionality. Sander Mol also posts his boot menu code in there. So that might be another interesting reason for going there.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Bart. I don't see any more questions at the moment. Maybe, again, people can also put them in the chat. I will stop the recording now.